Welcome to Booking It. Today's episode will be Mansfield Park. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Booking It. I'm of course your eloquent host, Cooper Cobbs, and joining me today is my very good friend, Mr. Tanner Lewis.
Howdy, folks.
And today, Tanner and I are back to our other love, aside from fantasy, which is Jane Austen. And once again, we're doing an episode on a Jane Austen book. I think this is our third or fourth now, and so we are super psyched to be back here talking about books that guys should love and that we do love as guys. And so, anyway, I read Mansfield Park kind of all of last semester. It's kind of like a longer read. I took kind of slowly. It kind of finished near the end of winter break. And then Tanner finished it relatively recently, I think earlier this week. And so we got together and are excited to talk about it. So anyway, but Tanner, how have you been recently?
Good. I've been good. A lot of work, a lot of money making. My bank account, I get paid weekly at this job, and I don't know what to do with myself getting paid weekly instead of bi-weekly. Instead of getting one big bump every 2 weeks, I get like these, not incremental because I'm still working a lot, so I'm getting like a solid paycheck every week, but like it's weird to get a solid paycheck every Friday. I'm like, so like today, it's Friday as we're recording this, and like my paycheck came in today, and I was like, ooh, I feel good today. It's like,
if only you guys could see the shoulder shake that Tanner just did when he said that. Yeah, that's good.
It's a good morale boost.
Yeah, I've always remembered this part from The Last Battle. It's always stuck with me where Tyrion is tied up and all the animals are feeding him, and they're giving him like little thimblefuls of wine instead of like one big cup. And C.S. Lewis says, but everybody knows that little bits of a drink will satisfy someone's thirst better than like one big long draught of something. And so anyway, all to say, same applies for paychecks probably, where, hey, it feels good to get that bump every week and not every other week. So small doses help out the morale, I guess. So
they definitely do. It makes it easier to go in on Monday.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, in many ways. Like, I spent a lot of that money over the weekend, so I need to
Better get back for the next paycheck. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
Doing good. Yeah, doing real good. Got back from spring break about 2 weeks ago. Had Hayden, my cousin, who's been on the podcast before, was here visiting me for like 5 days over a weekend at some class days, which was super exciting. Got to introduce him to all my friends here and got to sit on classes and go to church with me and hang out. So it was spectacular.
Very fun.
To see him and for him to come kind of experience my life now. And so anyway, it was great. And we're kind of ramping up. I did a little debate something tomorrow, and this week has been a lot faster than last week. I don't know why, but getting back to college after a break is always like the first week kind of goes by really slowly, and then boom, it's the next week is done. Seems like half as fast. So anyway, but it's been very good up here.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. I feel like the same's for work for me though. Like I'll have a day that I'm off, and the days that I'm off feel like they take forever. But then like today, I literally feel like it was 8:30 like 5 minutes ago. Like 8:30 a.m. 5 minutes ago. And I'm like, there was no shot. It is 7 p.m. right now. Like there's no way.
Seriously, yep. I think it's not enough time. Yeah, I have a theology paper due in 4 hours, so I'm looking forward to finishing that up after this. But yeah, I mean, time just flies with that. Like I was like, okay, I'll do some final edits at the library and then go to dinner. And then soon I was like, oh crap, I've already spent like 15 minutes on these final edits, and I meant to spend like 5. But anyway, yeah, time is weird.
That'll do it. Time is weird. And time is weird.
Yeah,
very fun.
But one thing that does not change over time is our respect and love for Jane Austen. And yes, that was a good transition because I'm good at those sometimes. But let's talk about. So I mentioned earlier, we actually both really do enjoy, unironically, reading Jane Austen. So we've done Pride and Prejudice before on the podcast. We've done Emma. Those are some of my favorite episodes ever. Highly recommend you guys check those out. It's like 79 and 80, I think. Really good discussions. I think I read Persuasion, and then you were on kind of for a discussion about that. And we can have to talk about that again. Like I read Persuasion actually this semester for college as well. Anyway, but I read Mansfield Park. Encourage you to read it as kind of an opportunity to talk about Jane Austen again, and you listen to it, and we're kind of excited to talk about it. So anyway, all to say, describe kind of like your history with Jane Austen, your love for her, and then maybe kind of like give some like foretaste of how you liked Mansfield Park in context of all that.
Yeah. So obviously, like any person that reads Jane Austen, my first experience with her was Pride and Prejudice. I mean, whose wasn't? I forget when. I think we talked about it. Pride and Prejudice. Like I think we had a recording. No, we had it for school at one point. Like there was
sophomore year.
It was in sophomore year. Whatever challenge 2, I believe it was. And so I definitely know that I read it probably 2 years before that. So I definitely read it in middle school with my family. And I had knocked it out before that. All audiobook for some reason, like, which is weird because I was not an audio person back then, right? I have been more so like towards the recent years. I mean, I listened to 4 hours of podcasts at work today. 4 hours worth of content at work. It's like incredible. Like I knock out books so fast now through just like an audiobook. But
well, that's the thing for me is like actually coming here and kind of having that switch to where like over the summer I was doing like 6 audiobooks a month or something like that. You know, and then here at PhD just less time because I'm not really on the go listening to things anymore, except when I'm like working out or walking to classes, which is like, you know, a very small campus, 5 minutes.
Oh yeah.
And so, but kind of inverse, but totally understand where I'm coming from. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of like my experience, and I mean, I've just like the past year kind of this school year has kind of just been like that, being overseas and all of that. Just audiobooks have been the go-to. All of that to say, it was weird that I listened to Pride and Prejudice as like an audiobook primarily, like for the first time, because I was just not doing that for stuff back then. Like it was made so much more sense to get a hard copy or put it on my Kindle or whatever. I think that was still during my Kindle days when I was consistently reading on my Kindle, something like
Perhaps.
that.
Yeah.
It might have been. But knocked it out with my family, really loved it. I think that was my first experience. Read it, I think I've read it 3 or 4 times now, maybe 5. It's one of those that I've read a lot. I know that I've read it a lot. Like, it's not a joke, because I read it all the way with my family. I read it all the way for CC, and then I read it all the way for fun, probably once or twice. So definitely 3 or 4 times, which is a solid number. Which is almost, I think I've read Pride and Prejudice more than my favorite book, which is Little Women. Like, I think I've read Little Women 3 times, and I think that I've definitely read Pride and Prejudice at least 4.
Wow.
Isn't that weird? That's so weird.
Maybe, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's, you know, your favorite book is often a one that you go back to very often, but I mean, I don't think it's wrong to have a favorite book that, you know, really stuck with you for a few reads. And honestly, you know, it might be like, it's something I can't, it's for some people, a favorite book might be something they need to return to, you know, only ever so often to get that kind of like increased potency or something. But, you know, it depends.
I think Little Women is also longer as well.
Yeah,
like
it is.
It's not it's not an easy bite. Like, I think even the audiobook version is like 33 hours, something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that, which is like double the time of Jane Austen's longest book, which is Mansfield Park. I did look it up.
Yeah, I think it is.
Anyways, that was my first experience with Jane Austen. Nothing fancy. I think I've definitely read Mansfield Park. I've definitely read Emma. I think I've read Sense and Sensibility. I say I think I've read because I believe that I know like the contents of the story, but I will not die on that hill. This is not something that I will die on. I do not think that I have read it.
All right.
I will not confidently say that I've read Sense and Sensibility, but I've definitely read Pride and Prejudice and Emma for sure. I don't know that I've read anything else outside of Mansfield Park recently.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, you really enjoyed Mansfield Park. It seemed like. I mean, I'm assuming you did.
It was a weird one. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay.
Like, as far as like books that I've been reading recently so as all of you know, almost everything that I've been reading has been on the podcast recently. Like, thus is the life of a podcaster.
They are coextensive. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you know if you've been listening, you know that I've been reading Brandon Sanderson and the Stormlight Archive. And so there, on one hand, there was like trashy writing, okay story over here with like 65-hour long audiobooks that I've been listening to. On the other side is a 15-hour Is that what it is? 15-hour?
Something like that. I didn't listen to it, so I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's like 15 and a half hour Jane Austen, Mansfield Park. And that, like, how different those are is just staggering, right? And there was just the transition between that was just stunning. Like I almost got shell shocked whenever I turned it on. Like my brain didn't want to focus because she was using too many words before she got to like what she was trying to say. And towards the end, like my brain started to lock in. Like about probably 4 or 5 chapters in, I'm like, okay, and my brain started to lock in with each sentence and like start to create some scenery around it instead of just like waiting for the action verb. Of like what's happening, like you have to with mediocre writers like Brandon Sanderson. So that was weird, and at the same time, I'm trying to like on the side read Anna Karenina and War and Peace, and so
you're trying to read both of them right now,
dude. I told you my New Year's resolution was to finish War and Peace. Yes, I'm reading both of them at the same time. I have to. Okay, I will not give up my quest.
Let's spend a second on this real quick. How far are you through? I know we talked about Anna Karenina like a while ago, but how far are you through both of them right now?
Okay. War and Peace, I have committed to myself. I will finish at least 5 chapters every 2 weeks, I believe is what it was. Okay. So about 10 chapters a month. But I definitely get done more than that on some months. I just gave myself like that benchmark to be able to get through a set portion each month. Yeah. So I've definitely been doing that. I don't know where I'm sitting right now because I got through like 20 chapters or something back in, I don't know, two weeks ago. So yeah. I hit a pause button on that so I could knock out Anna Karenina and Mansfield Park. And so that I could finish Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archive book. Guys, I'm reading so much right now.
That's good.
Like
I love
for fun. It's crazy. I think I have like I think I'm actively reading 4 books right now that are like purely fiction and fantasy. Like not fantasy, but purely like fiction. And then on top of that, I'm reading 3 nonfiction for like just, benefits, edify myself spiritually and professionally, all of the good stuff. But the shell shock between all 3 of those things, specifically the going from Brandon Sanderson to like Russian Leo Tolstoy, translated by Oxford nonetheless, to Mansfield Park, right? So we've got the trashy modern American to the deep like philosophical Russian, all the way to the like the airy, floaty, like high society Mansfield Park, kind of a deal. It was weird. I didn't know what to do with myself whenever I was reading Mansfield Park as a result. Because their writing just felt so different.
Yeah. No, I mean, we read Crime and Punishment in class recently for Westlit. Yeah. And so reading that alongside Anna Karenina, and then right after Persuasion was like really interesting contrast, even between like Tolstoy and Dostoevsky, but also especially between Austen and Dostoevsky, because both of them are interestingly, so Mansfield Park kind of is too, but Persuasion is really, really interior, like in terms of the conflict, in terms of the focus of the novel. I think I talk about this a little bit probably in the episode that I did a while ago on it, but the conflict is just in the protagonist's mind, really, when it comes down to a lot of the drama and a lot of like where the stakes are and a lot of where the anxiety happens. It's all in her mind. In Mansfield Park, I suppose, is a bit like that too with Fanny Price, to where because she is less of a Emma or Elizabeth, then she kind of the narrator kind of has to take more upon herself to describe the nature of this character, because she is kind of shy and not as forward, I guess is the best way to put it. So a very interesting conversation in terms of like literature coming along, and we're getting more psychological, more interior. And even Jane Austen is doing that, but especially with this protagonist, Fanny Price. So, but all that to say, you said, kind of a weird mix, with all the books you got going on, but it was kind of a weird one for you. But you texted me, I'm dying to talk about it. So, like, what's going on there?
I texted you that immediately after I was at work and I was on break and I had just finished the final chapter of the book, and during the entirety of like the final two chapters, in my brain I was thinking to myself, "This is spoilers on, guys. This is spoilers on.
Yeah, spoiler. Yep.
Spoilers have been turned on. Skip forward past this part if you do not want to. If you want to go read."
And we can't promise that you'd be safe jumping forward. Yeah. So.
Yeah. No promises. But this part right here, spoilers for sure. Well, I'm finishing the book, and I'm thinking to myself, there is no way that she would marry her cousin. Like,
oh, really?
This is just something that wouldn't happen, because that's what I'm telling myself in this book, and I have no idea why I'm thinking that. Like, it would totally happen in their society.
Right.
I'm just like, I'm totally discounting that and like ignoring that, and have been telling myself that for like half of the book. Just like, she wouldn't marry him, right? So
yeah.
She's just being dramatic. She's actually going to end up going with this guy, or she's going to end up being a happy unmarried person, right? Like,
that never happened to Jane Austen. Yeah.
I decided to give her zero benefit of the doubt in this instance and be surprised is what I wanted.
Okay, interesting.
I decided to be surprised in this instance, and I definitely was. I was like, oh, so you're going to marry the cousin. That's kind of crazy.
So at what point did you realize that was a possibility?
It was immediately after Henry went and did all of his crap.
So it wasn't until the very end that you were like, oh, Edmund's the guy that she's going to end up with. Okay.
Yeah, because I was still giving Henry like a little bit of, I was still discounting Fanny just a little bit. Part of this is like I wasn't paying attention a whole lot during like the first part of the book, once again, because like my brain was just like looking for action verbs and like get me to something that's like going to do something, right? And like not fully locking in, like just describe.
Yeah, I think this book takes a bit to get into anyway. Yeah.
So, like, my brain wasn't all the way there until, like, the halfway point. And so, maybe not the halfway point, about a quarter of the way through the book. About a quarter of the way through the book, that's when my brain, like, all the way locked in. And I was able to, like, totally understand where everybody was coming from. So, like, there wasn't... My brain was not to the point where I could, like, fully agree with Fanny that her judgment on Henry was, like, on Henry Crawford was, like, a valid point. You know?
Yeah.
Like, I was willing to discount her just a little bit, just call her innocent like everybody else in the book was.
Right.
And, like, make her decide that she, like... I was doing a Pride and Prejudice in my brain, right? Like, I was thinking Mr. Darcy is actually the person for you, despite the fact that you hate him.
Right.
Kind of a deal. And that's what I was doing in my brain. And so whenever he actually went and messed up, that's when I thought to myself, oh, I messed up in my assumption of that.
Yeah, this is a very good point, and I can ask about this. You know, like I said, in Pride and Prejudice, the whole point is that, you know, Darcy may be pride, but Elizabeth is prejudice. Like, she kind of has this sin in her own heart just to grow and change. Does Fanny have something like that? Like, are we just kind of supposed to be on board all the way through? Like, is she just kind of like pure all the way through, or is your kind of first instinct right? Like, oh, maybe there are some elements here where Fanny is an imperfect character in need of growth.
Yeah, I think I'm not an objective source on this. I probably have, if I'm being 100% honest, I probably need to go back and read this book before I can make judgment calls like that.
Sure.
Just because, like, once again, I was listening to it. I wasn't all head was definitely in the clouds flying like a kite during the first part of the book. But I think that from my personal judgment, with that caveat being added, I think you're supposed to be all the way on board with her from the beginning, just knowing who she is and knowing what her character is throughout the book and knowing how she's been right in the past.
Yeah.
And so you're kind of just supposed to be on board with her.
Do you think that sets up like a more boring novel, given that our protagonist doesn't have to change all that much?
Not necessarily. I think that the biggest, despite the fact that our protagonist doesn't have to change, I think the biggest thing is that Edmund has to change in his own perception, right? Like, it's almost like a side / main character that's not the protagonist has to be the one that comes alongside and has like this huge change, right? Because we've been following him throughout this entire time, right? He's the one that's been carrying taking care of Fanny. Fanny's like the crying 10-year-old who like is just beside herself, right? Edmund is the person that comes and takes care of her, and then she slowly starts to change Edmund in small incremental ways after that, right? I mean, he doesn't look anything like his father or his brother in that instance, right? Like he's a different guy from them, partially I would say because of Fanny, right? And just her influences on him. And so I think that like the end part of that book is just him realizing, oh, Mrs. Crawford isn't for me. Fanny was right, and that, and all of that change is kind of the main part of that, and why it doesn't like take away from the book, right? Because I don't think that Fanny changes personally, right? I think Fanny stays the same for the most part. I think that she grows in, I mean, the ways that everybody grows, right? But I don't think that she like has a major character arc in the way that I think Edmund does. In that same sense.
Yeah, that's true. I definitely agree with you. I think that if Fanny changes, it's not all that much. And that more so, you're right. The whole point is her changing the people around her, and particularly Edmund. And well, like the lack of other people, who do change, or how people don't change even when they're around her. Like, like Mariah. Then there's what's her face that Edmund was going to marry but didn't. And then there's Henry himself, who was going to marry, or who was pursuing her, and then ended up, after that didn't work out, getting out of town with another girl, unmarried. Yeah. So who it seemed like was experiencing genuine affection for Fanny, genuine change, and then kind of threw that all away. So it's Mary Crawford. Edmund was going to marry, or was trying to get after Mary Crawford. So speaking of that, though, Fanny does change Edmund, but was there ever a point, and this is actually may not apply so much to you as you're reading the novel, since you didn't know that she was interested in Edmund, but did you ever feel at the end like, really, you want to go after Edmund? Like, he was chasing Mary, who we see through Fanny, just not that great, even though like moments of doubt. Edmund is, is he all that great? Like, he doesn't have like the risk reward that Henry does. He's not, he's not his father, as you said. And he keeps like being like, yeah, Fanny's great. Love Fanny. And then like not, acting upon that in a kind of romantic way. I don't know. Did you feel like Fanny was settling? Did you feel like she was like, is this guy like worth your, redeeming affection? I don't know.
Here is what I have to say about that. And I'm going to quote my mom, and you're probably going to recognize this quote because you've been around us for so long. Marry your best friend. And I think that that's what Fanny did in that certain instance, right? Like it wasn't a settling, right? It was an awakening, like a recognition of what she actually wanted.
Was it an awakening on her part, or was she more self-conscious about it, and then for Edmund it was an awakening?
It might have been that way around. Once again, I was blinded to the actual interest that she had in him, just through my own ignorance and head in the clouds,
unwillingness to not be surprised.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I think that for whichever one it was, I think it was an awakening of like, oh, this person's my best friend, right? Like, why would I go and try to become somebody else's best friend when like my actual best friend is sitting right here?
One of the reasons that I read it over a long time, and also because that I knew that Edmund was going to end up with Fanny, was because I was listening to it along with the podcast Close Reads when they were reading it, and one of the things they talked about was maybe they kind of talked about like how Edmund and Fanny, like their romance, it wasn't going to be like this heat of passion, like this super passionate eros-centered kind of love, but it was going to be like this very steady, very firm, very comforting kind of love, But I wonder if, and they may have asked this question too, like if that is the reason why Mansfield Park isn't as lasting as like Pride and Prejudice is. Like Elizabeth has some gumption, Darcy is seen as this very maybe the movie in recent years at least has kind of helped with that in terms of how they pictured their romance and how they pictured Darcy. Do you feel that way? Like, is that a valid reason to say that Mansfield Park isn't as well known as Pride and Prejudice? Is it kind of because the male lead isn't as compelling to many out there, or their kind of the love that the two main characters share isn't exactly as potent as it might be in other Austen characters?
Yeah, that could be an aspect of it. I think that the biggest reason for me that I think that it's not as well known as the others is simply because like the plot isn't as easy to recognize as the other ones, right? Like if you think about Pride and Prejudice, or you think about What I Know Sense and Sensibility is, or you think about Emma, right? Like there's a very clear plot line and character arc for each one of those that you're like, whichever. Names are slipping for me for Pride and Prejudice at the moment, but Mr. Darcy is the only one that I can come up with, right? Like Mr. Darcy and whichever sister he marries, because I haven't read this book in a long time.
Elizabeth Bennet.
Yeah, Elizabeth Bennet. Thank you. Elizabeth Bennet and Darcy, right? Like they had to overcome like their pride and their prejudice, and like there's like a very clear plot line that's happening in that story, and like after you finish it, it's so easy to be like, yeah, that was the plot line, and it sticks really fast. Same thing with Emma. It's like, oh man, Emma was wrong, and then Emma has to come back and be like, I was wrong,
Yep.
And
the one person who is willing to tell her she was wrong is the one that she gets to marry. So
exactly. And so you're like, oh, okay, she like Emma, like the main thing, she was wrong, right? Like what's the main thing of Mansfield Park? Well, I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's not, it doesn't click as fast. It's not one of those that you can be like, that does that. And that's good because it, right? Like if you've read it all the way, you're like, okay, it's really about like Fanny Price and her overcoming like all of the people around her telling her that she's something different and that she's like unlovable and that she's like not desirable, and then cousin coming in and saying you're desirable to me, right?
Yeah.
And well, like that's harder to convey than, I think that's harder to convey and not as snappy as like Pride and Prejudice or Emma, in that like Emma, you're wrong. Like it's in the name for Pride and Prejudice, right? Like
that's true.
Mr. Darcy, you're prideful. Elizabeth Bennet, you have a lot of prejudice in you, right? Mansfield Park is just like, it doesn't have a snap to it for like what's memorable.
Yeah, it's true. I think that's a very good point. The Close Reads podcast series, their thesis was that Mansfield Park is about moral education, and so you see this at least in the contrast of like Fanny and her siblings. So Fanny comes to Mansfield, is around the kind of people educated in thumbs up, is educated in all these things. But then she goes home and is just disturbed by the chaos, is disturbed by the lack of manners that she sees in her younger siblings and her mom or dad, and she can't wait to get back to Mansfield. And you see that at the end also where her younger sister goes to Mansfield to kind of do the same thing that Fanny did. And at the same time, like it's kind of like this philosophical question of like, well, how did Edmund's younger brother kind of have some troubles? Then how could Mrs. Norris be awful? And how could the Bertrams and some of the people and the Crawfords that they hang out with also not turn out to be that great? But Fanny is educated in a way morally and is mature morally in a way that Mariah is not, in a way that Mary Crawford's not. So that's kind of like the thesis of what they thought the book was about, which may be true, and I think that's interesting and as actually a very compelling way to read the book. But also, it's not as flashy, it's not as succinct, compelling as other.
It doesn't stick as easy as Emma, you're wrong.
Yeah,
like,
badly done, Emma. Like you can say the whole book in that. Yeah,
exactly. Like stop meddling in other people's business, right? Like,
right.
and then you're done, right? There's your Netflix series, right?
Yeah.
It's just not as succinct and it's not as snappy, and like it doesn't click into your brain. I'm thinking of like a some of those grips that you can get to be able to snap something into, right? Like it just doesn't sit there as quickly as something else. Like you have to work for it.
Yeah, I'm looking up right now. I can't remember if this was like one of the last novels that she wrote. I think it was definitely towards the end of her career.
Okay.
It may have been published. Okay, no, last completed was Persuasion. That makes sense.
That does make sense.
Both Persuasion and Northanger Abbey was published after her death.
Okay.
Interesting. So she must have written Mansfield Park kind of. All right, so Sense and Sensibility was her first, then Pride and Prejudice, then Mansfield Park, then Emma, Northanger Abbey, Persuasion.
Okay.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, well, a lot of people, at least the Close Roots podcast series, and some people think that Mansfield Park is kind of like, people, a lot of Austen lovers, I guess, love it because it's like, got some more complex things going on, at least. But I think personally, it may be the least favorite of the ones that I've read so far. Not that I hate any of them by any means. Like Pride and Prejudice and Emma are my favorites, and then I really enjoyed Persuasion this time around. Highly recommend reading that one. And then Mansfield Park's kind of right below that. But I kind of got kind of got into the book. But summarizing your thoughts again, would you say that Mansfield Park is your least favorite Austen you've read so far? And I guess like where would you kind of, like give me a thesis of your thoughts on the book. Maybe our conversation so far is going to help clarify that.
Yeah. Definitely my least favorite so far. And once again, it is a really good book still.
Yeah, it's a very good book. Phenomenal book.
Do not hear from us that you should read it. You should go read it. It was excellent.
Yep.
It just doesn't compare to the more excellent books that exist out there, like Pride and Prejudice and Emma, which you should definitely go read before this book. But I think that my thesis, where I really landed, why it's like my least favorite, is out of comparing it to her other books.
Right.
Is just that it's not. I don't know. It doesn't have that same appeal. It drags a little bit in the beginning to be able to get me all the way into it, and so I mean it was harder to get into for me in the first place. Once again, don't know if that's because I was coming from trashy literature / philosophical Russian literature that from like the 1800s that's just like so heavy to be able to like transfer out of anyways. But I think that like it was a little bit hard for me to just get into in the first spot. But it just, the only reason that it's my least favorite out of Jane Austen's is because I love Emma and Pride and Prejudice so much. Like if we're being 100% honest, right? Like their storylines make so much more sense to me. It's so much easier for me to be able to explain and draw things out of those books. That's like, this is really good. This is a good example of something that I can use in my life right now. Or this is a good example of a gospel presentation, a way to be like, there's so many other things that I can get out of there so much quicker than I can out of Mansfield Park, right? Like, can you tell I've really turned into a practical application person? This is why I'm reading 3 other books that are like professional and business-like that are not like fiction anymore. It's because everything is an example and an exordium to something. Otherwise it's useless.
Oh my gosh!
That's not what I'm saying. I went to the far end, but
sure.
Like I think about that now whenever I'm reading something, right? Like a good story is not just a good story, right? A good story has a purpose, and does it achieve that purpose? And it was harder for me to find the purpose of Mansfield Park than it was for me to find the purpose of Emma and to find the purpose of Pride and Prejudice, right? Like the purpose of Emma, badly done, Emma, badly done, right? If you go and look at Pride and Prejudice, right? Purpose of Pride and Prejudice, right? Forgive each other, right? Like seek to understand, right? There's all of that stuff happening in Pride and Prejudice as well. It was harder for me to find that in Mansfield Park and draw something out of it like that, and so it just doesn't rise to the top as fast as those other two do.
Yeah, and I don't want anybody to hear us be saying like, oh, because these novels are like flashier and because it's more entertaining, therefore, oh, this novel that can't be summarized in one sentence, its themes, its messages can't be summarized in one sentence. Oh, it's worse because of that. No, I'm not saying that. And I think that Tanner would agree with this, and I would definitely agree with this. Like reading Mansfield Park and kind of taking it slower and dwelling on it and kind of thinking about some things we talked about, or maybe find another good podcast or something on it. And try to contemplate the things that Jane Austen is talking about, because she is talking about pretty serious things, like, moral education, and also, like, you're gonna fall in love with the kind of person that you are excited to live with, or you're gonna fall in love with the person who is your best friend and who is steady and constant, who doesn't have as many weaknesses as the other person, but isn't maybe, as whatever word to use. But all to say, Mansfield Park is spectacular. It is definitely more contemplative, slow burn novel. And you should be aware of that going in. It's not your Pride and Prejudice, but I think what Tanner and I are saying is that Emma and Pride and Prejudice have a lot of the elements and reflection and good themes that Mansfield Park does, as well as having some more exciting things that I think we definitely enjoy. But yeah, I would still give Mansfield Park like 8, 9 out of 10. Like,
yeah, for sure,
very good.
It's still an excellent book. Do not hear from. What we were very much trying to avoid is hearing us say this is a bad book. We're just comparing it to Jane Austen and
Correct.
Being like, there's a reason why Pride and Prejudice and Emma and Sense and Sensibility are faster to be able to find whenever you search up Jane Austen on on Audible or on Amazon or wherever you buy your books or audiobooks, right? Like, there's a reason why those pop up first. It's because they're more recognizable they're snappier and the way that they...
And more exciting characters, yeah.
Exactly, more exciting characters, bigger character arcs, it's bigger than life in some instances, right? Like, it goes out of that. It goes outside of the walls of its book a lot more than Mansfield Park does, right? Like, Mansfield Park is like in its kind of own set little world, right? Like, those tend to expand a lot more. And so I think that, there's a reason why those books do really well and why Mansfield Park is one that you have to dig for.
Yeah. It's not even to dig for it either, but it's all relative. It's all relative here.
All relative. Right. Compared to Jane Austen, compared to Brandon Sanderson, this book is excellent.
Come on. Yeah. Exactly. Okay. Well, here's another question for you. A lot of people, a lot of feminists are like, well, finally, we've gotten interpreters. Women can read these books that men have been, commenting on and writing and whatnot, and provide some valuable insights for the rest of the world as to how women interpret these books. And fair point. But I think it's about time that the guys did the same with Jane Austen. And so that's kind of, I don't mean to talk down to women who anyway, I'll just say
you dug yourself a deep hole there, sir.
As a man, what unique insights do you think you get from Mansfield Park that maybe someone else may not get? And by someone else, I mean women. No, I'm sorry. I'll seriously, I'll just say, like, with two,
we're two dudes talking about
18,
Jane
19-year-old guys talking about Jane Austen. Like,
exactly.
The whole point is that we have maybe something different to say or something to contribute. That
exactly.
Maybe a value. I hope that was clear. I hope that is the case.
Yes.
To say, but
it's always interesting to get inside, like, a girl's mind, right? Like, it's a girl written by a girl, right? It's not a girl written by a guy. It's truly what a woman of the time was thinking about, right? Like, Jane Austen could not write something that she did not know that women were not thinking, right? She's writing from experience. And so I think that was an interesting... It's always interesting to be able to get, like, as a guy, it's interesting to be able to get inside of somebody's head in that kind of a way. There's, like, interesting insights that come about that, like, the way that she reacts to certain situations. And the way that she thinks about things, right? Like, people in high society, something that I've been getting out of Anna Karenina and War and Peace recently, people in high society think differently than people in lower society, right? They just do. We live in America.
Especially when there were, like, actual aristocracies.
Exactly. They really did. They thought about things differently. You never see them thinking about, like, actual money in War and Peace or Anna Karenina, right? Like, they're talking about sums that are so large. Like, I open up my iPhone to try and, like, translate, like, to try and, like, go through and, like, convert the money. And I'll sometimes do this for some of the Jane Austen books too. And the money that they are talking about is, like, millions or billions of dollars in today's dollars that they're talking about moving around. And they're talking about it so nonchalantly, like, oh my gosh, I can't marry a guy that's making $10 million a year. I have to go and marry the guy that's making $70 million a year, right? Like, it's that kind of a deal. And so getting inside of that kind of a head is always interesting to me, like as a guy, and thinking about that, right? Because his guys were like, how can I make money? How can I make the 70 million a year, well, right?
and that's interesting because Edmund is going to become a clergyman in the Church of England. So he's not going to be making the big bucks, although his dad is pretty well off and they'll live a comfortable life.
Oh yeah, that it was definitely different in that.
And the thing isn't Mary like trying to talk Edmund out of going and becoming a priest because she's like doesn't want to live like a priestly life.
Yeah, she wants the money.
Yeah,
show me the money.
Which is a red flag. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. But I enjoy getting all of that to say. I enjoy getting inside of their heads and like seeing what they're thinking about and seeing like the ways that they go through and make the decision making process. I was especially interested at like watching the way that Aunt Norris and Miss Norris and Mrs. Bertram interacted with Fanny and like the differences in that was really interesting as well. I think that it was like, yeah, it just shows how easy it is when a guy is not standing up for somebody, for like a woman, like what happens, right? Like you see Edmund coming in and like saving her multiple times, like, no, Aunt Norris, like you can't do that, right? Like,
right, or even in front of other company, like
exactly
their age.
And so I think that was impactful to me in this one, right? Like, stand up for your sisters, stand up for women, like as a guy, stand up for women that are being taken advantage of from other women, right? Like, even in that kind of a sense, right? Like that was the eye-opening thing to me, right? Like it's like it's not just guys that will try and take advantage or use people, right? Like girls will do that too. Stand up for them.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And definitely with Edmund, it was like go further even. Like it was okay. Yeah. You're standing up for her. You're saying all these great things about her. Like you can put your money where your mouth is at some point. Yeah. But yeah, I think definitely another thing for me. This is definitely not something I came up with, but I've heard it's been very good for me reading Austen is, you're not supposed to see yourself in Fanny Price all the way. You're supposed to see yourself in the characters who are bad. Like you're like, oh, I see some Mr. Bennet in myself. That's not good. Or oh, I see some Frank Churchill in Emma when he's like, being a guy who's like, kind of being a flirt when he's already engaged. And in Mansfield Park, it's like, oh, like Henry Crawford had this idea. I'm gonna go like try to get Fanny Price to fall in love with me as a joke, which is definitely something that a guy would do. And then he's like, oh crap, like I'm falling in love with Fanny, and then she rejects him because she says, you're still not up to scruff, basically. And then he hightails it out of town with, at some point with another lady who is married and he's not married, and so commits adultery. And it's not funny, Tanner. We're laughing at. But
I'm laughing at the fact that it was her cousin.
Oh yeah, that is true. That is true.
Cousins that he was flirting with before her.
Yeah, that's true.
There's just so much going on in that little section.
All
right
to say,
there.
the takeaway for guys is this: like, A, everything that happened there, a guy could do, but B, he was in the midst of a kind of turning, a kind of changing, and even in the midst of that, burned it all down. Turned his back on all of it, and he realizes from that Fanny Price is good for his soul, and that he wants to be around a woman that is good for his soul, and that's a good thing. And we kind of understand why Fanny turns him away, but we also understand that, like, well, and it's a good question actually. Let me just open it as a question. We can talk about it. We talked earlier, Edmund. Maybe as a comparison to other Austen, leading male figures, not as compelling, flashy. We have to question: is Fanny like, do you really want this guy? Then we have Henry, who's in the midst of, a kind of change, or a redemption, or repentance from his old ways, and is becoming more and more like a good man, especially as he spends time around Fanny. Like, I think Austen definitely wants us to wonder, should she go with Henry over the other guy? Do you feel that at all? I mean, you maybe know Edmund was going to
obviously
be the guy.
Yeah, I definitely felt that. I definitely felt that there was opportunity for Henry to change in a significant way, right? I didn't see him as like the end all be all bad guy can't change, right? Like I saw him as could definitely change, definitely could be Mr. Darcy kind of a moment kind of guy.
Sure.
And so I think that there was a real opportunity for him to be able to turn around and change. And I think where he fell short was that he caved after she rejected him, right? Like there's I think the difference between him and Mr. Darcy is Mr. Darcy approaches once, right? And then leaves it alone, right? And he leaves it alone until he sees actual movement from her, right? Like
and in himself.
And in himself, exactly. And then he approaches for the second time, right? And in that approaching for a second time, it was entirely different, right? But when you see Henry Crawford do it, right? Henry Crawford comes up and he does it the first time, and she's like, "Yeah, heck no," right? And
right.
And
well, that scene's awful too, because just like the way that, Mr. Bertram, Thomas Bertram, is like, kind of going down on Fanny, like, this is the best you could hope for, like, take it. And she's crying, and he's like, scolding her. It's like awful. Yeah.
So I think that so there's that, and then he pestered. He didn't stop, right?
Yeah.
So that was mistake number one. Mistake number two was he didn't continue to change afterwards. He just caved, gave into temptation, and ran away, right? Like, he was definitely still in love with this Fanny Price. He just thought that it was too hard, and he gave up. Right? He thought that it was impossible.
And then both of them, well, okay, it was. But you're absolutely right that he should have kept up, persevered, so to speak. And also that I think you're right. Like, he is still in love with Fanny Price in some sense, and he, instead of that, he kind of like resentfully went after this old flame, and they're both going to be unhappy, and it's just not going to be great. And I can't remember too well what Austen says about them, and like her, the story's over, let me just tell you what happens, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I don't think they were on good terms with their families or anything like that. And
no, didn't she?
A bad situation.
She just ended up like running away from him and coming back and going off with Mrs. Norris, is what happened. So
what?
Mariah, like comes back home because she and Henry Crawford get into a huge argument and just can't hold on, and so she just comes back and has been divorced from her husband at this point, and no, it's because Henry wasn't going to actually marry her. That was the problem. Bro wasn't actually going to marry her. And so she's like, oh, snap, I did this wrong. And comes back crying to Dad.
That's right.
And Dad's like, I refuse to take you back into my home. Calls her some, yeah, exactly. Throws her in with Aunt Norris and sends him off to a remote country with a little cabin, and calls it good. And Jane Austen, as like the narrator, says, and that was the happiest thing to happen to Mansfield Park ever, because in one fell swoop they got rid of Mrs. Norris, the jerk, and Mariah, her like pet.
Oh my gosh, that's brutal. Yeah, I'll have to say though, like, you're absolutely right. Like, he just made in resentment, didn't just take away. Okay, Fanny's maybe a better person. She rejected me. That's tough. I got to get over that. And easier said than done. I got to get over that and, go find a new girl and love her and show what things that I have learned from Fanny, or, take with me the things that I have been bettered in, instead of that, just, resentfully went off. So anyway, I'll just say, as men, we can relate to that. We can see the temptation there, and we can definitely learn from it. So if you're a guy listening, take that away. Yeah. I don't think Jane Austen places any blame on Fanny.
She kind of leaves that up for debate, almost.
Yeah.
It's almost like, who's to say if she said yes to him, Like,
yeah.
Who's to say? But that wasn't her, that wasn't her job, right? Like, he wasn't ready for her.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, and I definitely think that she definitely bears no blame, even when Bertram is like, scolding her. I think that she's perfectly innocent there. I do think we are. I mean, just narratively and for the drama, supposed to debate Henry versus Edmund, and whatnot. But then we have the ending and what happens, and it's like, oh, Fanny was kind of right all along. Like, evidenced was her inward disapproval of him, and it was kind of justified.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't think there's too much blame Austen places on her for him.
Yeah.
So
exactly. Yeah, I think in the end, I personally walked away with she was right in the last place, right? Like, it was Henry's job to do the hard work of getting himself back into shape, like Mr. Darcy, and working for it. There was the hard work of coming back and saying, I was wrong in the first place. Will you take me back? Will you take me back now? Like, I've put in the work. I see the difference. Do you see the difference? Right?
Yeah.
I think that was his job to do that. I think that was his thing to get the work done. I don't think that it was Fanny's fault for saying no.
Yeah.
In the first place. Like, she was entirely justified to say no.
Yeah, and at the very end, Jane Austen kind of in her God's eye view just kind of shows how all the puzzle pieces fit together, and like, Maria and Miss Norris get each other and they're perfect, and Henry's off doing who knows what, but Edmund and Fanny have each other, and that's kind of how it all had to work out anyway. And what, in every way in which you thought it would be good for Edmund and Fanny to get together, it was. And so happily ever after, and I like that about Jane Austen. I'm fine with the novel just kind of ending like that. But, some people would like more debate, more open-ended, or less, hard-lined what happened. But that's a preference I don't care for.
I enjoy it. It's because she's telling us she's leaving open to interpretation what people should actually question. Right? Like, she's leaving open to an interpretation, like, who was right, who was wrong, right? Like, that's what she's leaving open to interpretation, right? Like, the end of the story shouldn't be like a thing of, well, what could have happened at the end, right? Like, what happened, like, after you know what I mean? Like, there shouldn't be speculation.
Not in the tradition that Jane Austen is writing in. It's
exactly.
Kind of like comic ends with marriage kind of tradition from Shakespeare.
Exactly. Yeah. So I enjoy that kind of writing, personally.
Yeah,
I mean,
I do too.
It's an authentic kind of writing, right? It's the authentic kind of writing that tells that, like, there's a person at the fireside telling you the story, and they're like, you know what? It ended like this, and everything ended, everything ended like this, right? And there's nothing else happening, right? Because I'm sitting here right now, and I'm telling you the story, and nothing else happened. You know what I mean? Right? Like, they all died. Like, I don't know what else you want to know. Right? Like, I'm 78 right now. They're no longer here. Right?
Yeah.
Kind of a
definitely.
Yeah. So I enjoy that. All that much to say that was a very long explanation too. I enjoy that kind of writing as well. Yeah.
Well, hey, you'll have to read Persuasion next, maybe, and maybe you like that one a bit more. It's shorter, and we can come back and talk about that. I mean, you have a lot on your plate to read right now.
After I knock out the 7 that I have on my plate right now, and then some, because I have a list that comes after. Dude, I thought that when I graduated from high school, I would stop having reading lists, but quite the opposite happened. Everybody looked at me and they said, "You know what? This kid doesn't have books to read for school anymore, so he can read anything that I suggest to him." And that's not entirely wrong. Like, I love it, right? But I'm like, yes, suggest to me your book, right? I can't promise that I'll actually read it, but please suggest it to me.
Right.
I'll go through and I'll fit it in when I have time, or I'll bury it in my Amazon wish list.
That's true. My reading list for fun right now is very long, and it's kind of just like I'm excited to not have school books anymore, so I can get to a lot more. But I'm also like, well, who knows if I'll read as much,
Yeah.
So anyway, all to say, read Mansfield Park, read Jane Austen. Hopefully this discussion was helpful to some people. So any final thoughts, Hayden? Not Hayden, Tanner.
Dang. No, not necessarily. What I will leave with is I will be going back and rereading this after I have finished all of the books on my list. I think there are 23 books last time I counted. They're in my actual next up list, right?
Okay.
Books that I actually have to read and have looked up and researched and read reviews on, and these are books that people want me to read, right? Whether professional or fictional or otherwise, right? So I have a long way to go before I'm free again. 23 books is like what somebody else would be like, I read 23 books like my entire high school career.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Seriously.
And I'm like, I have 23 books to get through before the end of the year. So I can get to more.
Yeah, I know. This year I was trying to read less books and kind of go through them slower. And that is kind of happening, like with Anna Karenina taking a lot longer than I thought. But I'm still going pretty fast on a lot of other things. So I'm getting through a lot of books, which is good. But hopefully in the future I'll have time to kind of like enjoy it slower and sink in and remember things better. But
I have to remember that I am not a 45-year-old man, and I am not. I'm getting book recommendations from 65-year-olds who are like, "You should read this," right? Like, I've read this. You should read this, right? And so I'm getting book, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I've read that." You know what I mean? And so I have to talk myself down. I'm like, this is a 65-year-old. He has literally lived 4 times the amount of life that you have. He is 100% capable of having read all of those books that you have already in like half, like with half the time commitment that you have given it.
No, it's true. Sometimes I try to measure like how much I've grown or how much I've read, like how much I know in like a miniature relation. So like this year, and it's like, oh, it's not that a lot. It's not that much. But then like you just go bigger. And you're like, that's how much I knew 5 years ago. And here I am now. Like, wow, that's a lot. And you think about how much life is ahead of you and how much you look at the people who are older and wiser. And you're like, there is hope. And I don't have to stress about getting it all down now. Like, I'm going to live and grow. And I can enjoy life and grow and learn now. But also look ahead to God's work in my life.
It's a part of like not procrastinating, still getting it done, but like savoring and enjoying at the same time, right? Like
definitely.
There's a difference between procrastination and that kind of a sense and like hoarding and engorging yourself, right? Like like the perfect example is like the past 2 days have been like days where I haven't been engorging myself, despite the fact that I've been listening. Yesterday I listened to 5 hours worth of podcasts from this guy named Jamie Winship. Highly recommend that you guys go read his book. It's called Living Fearlessly. Really, really, really stinking good. Highly recommend. It's about living in your identity in Christ. Well, I'm listening to some podcasts from him for like 4 hours. Today I'm listening to more podcasts from like a friend of a friend does this podcast. It's called the Movements Podcast. It's by a guy named Steve Addison. And I mean, I'm listening to this guy for like 4 or 5 hours today. And I mean, I feel really educated now today. I'm not going to lie. Like I've listened to like 8 hours of stuff within the past 2 days, and I've like been working while doing it. And I'm like, this is good. Like I've been productive and I've learned a lot. So, there's a part of that. And there's also a part of like, if I was just at the house doing nothing while listening to that would have been gorging. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
definitely.
There's a balance to it, I think.
That's cool. Well, it was a fun conversation, and we will now move into some donor shout-outs. So Tanner, tell us, where would someone go if they wanted a donor shout-out?
They would go to patreon.com/bookinit and donate to any of our $5 or up tiers.
That's correct. And so we're going to shout out the people who are currently doing that. And thank you to Nana, Peppy,
thank you, Nana,
Wayla, Anna, Keenan.
Thank you, guys.
Will, my mom, Mrs. Jenny, and Mrs. Hall. Thank you so much, each and every one of you, for your support. We couldn't do it without you.
Thank y'all.
And hey, if you can't support, no worries. But if you'd like to still support the show in other ways, leave us a 5-star rating and review. That would really help us out. Share with your friends. And hope you guys took something away. I look forward to talking again in the future with Tanner and Matthew, and we have some exciting things planned and stuff coming. So make sure you are looking out for those. But until all that, and until then,
keep on booking it.